Well, John, or as I call you, Yordy, welcome to the line. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm really glad for those of you who are listening and joining us again that you are sticking this out and listening to us talk about trade work, construction, all of those things. So we're gonna talk about some of that stuff like we typically do, but thanks for coming back in and listening to us again. So, Yordy, we're here to talk about the trades and the work that we do. And honestly, today you're our star, so we're going to be talking about you. So just a little bit of your history. What's your name? Where do you come from? You know.
Name is John Yordy. I'm from Lebanon, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Grew up there most of my life. Did spend about 8-10 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
In my early 20s.
Okay.
But grew up basically in Lebanon.
Nice. And now you're in Lebanon again, or you're in Lancaster, or I'm not sure where you live now.
Lebanon.
Okay.
Again, yes.
So just out back. Yeah.
Yep. Had to get out for a while and explore the world per se.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about your history and maybe what we'll call when we were prepping the podcast and in the room here, I was talking with our creative director and I referred to you as an OG. And so that would be the best way that I could describe you. You're original. So let's talk a little bit about your history and that story.
Okay.
So start when you're in high school, man.
So in high school, or as I was growing up, I wasn't really too sure of myself as what I wanted to do. My father owned his own automotive repair shop for 40 plus years. Always figured that's what I would do for my life. Worked since I was 10 years old on cars. And
Whoa. 10 years old? Like, how did that work with like child labor laws and things like that?
When you work for your father, there are things like that.
See,
Basically, I was pumping gas and doing oil changes at my father's station.
Okay.
You know, and you know, it wasn't it was okay, you get $20 or whatever, and you know, come work. It was basically my allowance money. You know, come work because you got nothing else to do, and that's what you're going to do, and you're learning the trade.
I thought he was going to say that when he worked for his father, there are no child labor laws, because that's what my father said.
Well, that is true. You coming to work whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So
you started at 10.
Yeah, so I was by 10 years old, I was already pumping gas and doing oil changes and things like that. As I went through high school, I would work, you know, after school at my dad's shop. You know, obviously learning more and more of the automotive trade and how to do repairs and things of that nature. By the time I was 16, I was had my license. I could go out and pick a car up with a tow truck. You know, he had an old 68.
Well, wait. When you were 16?
Yeah. By the time I was 16, I could probably parallel park a car with a tow truck.
All right, now you're just showing off. So, because when I was 16, I was learning how to drive a car legally. See how I worded that, legally? Like, I knew how to drive a car illegally, but...
Yeah, well, I had a lot of practice as working in the automotive trade.
Right.
You're driving cars all the time.
Well, and I forgot that at your age, they didn't have laws like that.
This is true.
Yeah.
I'm a little older than you. But,
This is true.
Just
Ow.
a little bit.
Man.
Just, you know.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, I was doing, you know, I would go pick up cars for repairs and basically learning the automotive trade. And that's what I always figured I would do growing up. And then after, you know, at 20 years old, I had already been in the automotive industry for 10 years. When I went in high school, I did VOTEC, you know, as typical, you know, you would do if you think you're going into the trades, and went for automotive. There wasn't much they could teach me because I had already been doing it for a while. And then I did my internship or whatever you want to call it from high school for a Jaguar dealership.
Okay.
worked for them for a year or so, and then basically said, you know what, I'm think I need to change from the automotive industry, and I wanted to see what else I could do.
And how old were you when you were thinking you needed this change?
Probably around 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So started when you were 10, worked for your dad, could parallel park a tow truck with a car on it at 16.
Yep.
I don't know if I believe that or not, but we're just going to
I
accept
could probably do it for you now.
Oh, wow. That, I know some guys with tow trucks. I think I might work that. Can we get that on the podcast? Like some video of him parallel parking a tow truck? That would be pretty awesome. So you're doing that at 16, and then at 20 years old, you've been in the automotive industry for a while now, and you're like, I need a change.
I need a change. I looked at it just as, hey, this is something. It was an unusual case because, I had already been working so long. Most kids aren't working until they're 18 years old, 16, 18 years old. I already been working for all but 10 years already.
Right.
And that's all I ever knew. So it was basically just a curiosity kind of thing. I needed to get out there and try other things. And I enjoyed other things like carpentry and things like that nature also, because I had friends who did carpentry and demolition and things of that nature. So, and so the thing that changed my mind was, or encouraged me to take that chance, was that I already had that knowledge of being in a trade.
Right.
So that gave me confidence to go out and try new things, because I always looked at it as I have something I can fall back on.
Yeah.
So I can put myself out there to learn a new skill, whatever, because I already have a skill that I can make money on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm going to interrupt you because if I don't, and we've talked a lot at different points without microphones, and I'm just going to interrupt you because if I don't, then I don't know if I'll actually get to say anything to anybody that's listening. But that's just me. But I can relate to what you're talking about. I can remember some of those things in my life and the importance of what it was in wanting to be doing something with my hands. I think the best advice that my father ever gave me was learn a trade. And
absolutely.
And I was able then to, and I was very blessed to be in a family where that's what he did. And they didn't care what I did, whether I went to college or whether I went to trade school. They were, and for me, trade school was working with Dad and then getting a job and being thrown into the job site. And so I can relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think our parents, a lot of them didn't have a choice of going to college or trade school, so they just felt like that. So there was a little bit of a push for college, but they also knew that trades were never a good or not a bad thing. Obviously, anytime you learn a trade, that is something that sticks with you for life.
Yeah,
you don't.
Nobody can take it
lose.
away from you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's such a great backup to have in life.
So do you think that when you talk about, learning a trade and those options that are there in front of us, are we communicating to people out there in the world that those options are there? Do you feel like Micro makes a comment about, well, these jobs are so unimportant, we're not even going to show them to you? Because you even talked about shop class or I'm trying to remember what you said, what you called it when you were in high school.
Votech.
Votech, yeah. You talk about Votech, and you talk about how you had that option. There are kids today, do they even know that exists? Does Votech even exist anymore?
I believe it still exists, but it's not pushed like it was. Or I wouldn't say pushed, but it's suppressed. I think
suppressed. It's not presented equally as, hey, here's a viable option for you in choosing a career and where you're going to go.
Right. I think there's a strong push from education today of you need to go to college to succeed, and that's the farthest thing from the truth, in my opinion. There's many different avenues that you can succeed in life.
Yeah,
college is one of them, but trades are also a very viable option, and in some ways it might be a better option for you. It all depends on the person.
Yeah.
If you're someone who enjoys working with your hands or being outside every day or whatever it is, there are many options and avenues in life.
Yeah. So there you are. We're still doing your history, except I keep interrupting you. This is like a gauntlet conversation where you say something and you're on a roll, and I just throw something out there and try to mess you up.
Well, you
so
gotta stop me every once in a while. I'll keep you blabbing.
I know. So pick back up where you left off.
So as I was saying, I had a trade. I had worked already 10 years, working on cars by the time I was 20. Looked at where I was at in my life, and I just thought, you know what, I want to try something else. So when I was in high school, I also took drafting classes, which back then was hand drafting.
Just for anybody who's listening here, just take a breather there, and because we have people that are out there listening to us, I hope. Describe for them a little bit when you say you took drafting classes. What is a drafting class, and what is drafting?
So drafting is basically you're drawing or putting together plans for construction. If you want to build a building or mechanically, engineers would do a drafting also. You're putting ideas down on paper so that someone has something to build from.
Okay.
So when it first started, when I was in high school, it was hand drafting, and they were just coming out with what's called CAD, computer-aided drafting.
I've worked with that for years, and I never knew that's what it was.
Yeah, that's what CAD stands for, computer-aided drafting. And so that was just starting to come out when I was actually learning a lot of this stuff. But I always enjoyed, because it took two of my likes that I like to do. Number one, like to engineer or design things, you know what I mean, and also building or fixing things. So that took those two things and put it together. So I always enjoyed that when I was in high school. So I thought, well, then maybe that's something I would like to do. So I decided that I was going to go to a tech school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But what gave me the confidence to do that was because that I knew I could always get a job as a mechanic.
Okay. And how old were you at this time when you made this decision that you're going to go to New Mexico to school?
21, 22 years old.
Okay. Okay. So you've been working in these things. You're at the Jaguar dealership. You need a change, and this was your change, and it was based on some of your experiences that you had when you were in high school.
Correct.
Okay. So that's a pretty big deal. Like, you lived in Lebanon, you grew up in Lebanon, you're still in Lebanon, and you're like, tell me a little bit about, and tell those who are listening just a little bit about, well, what was that? Did you have a plan, or did you just like load up your car and start driving?
I started, it actually started with just taking some basic college courses in Lebanon at HAC. And through that, I met some people that...
Could you take them online back then? I'm just curious if that was a thing.
What was online? No, this was pre that.
Yeah. Just for your listening, and you're probably listening on the internet, it was pre the internet. I'm a jerk.
Yeah, I'm a little older, so.
Yeah.
So I took a few courses, met some people who actually had been out to Albuquerque at one point and knew someone out there. So as we're talking, and you start talking about things, and basically we just decided that him and I were going to drive out there. So I packed up. Basically, I sold my Jeep that I had to another friend of mine. He gave me his Rabbit and $1,200, and I packed up everything in that Rabbit.
A Volkswagen Rabbit?
A Volkswagen Rabbit.
That was my first car.
It was like a 1980 Volkswagen Rabbit.
Mine was an 82.
And basically did a wheelie all the way down to, all the way across to New Mexico because it was loaded down so much. And drove all the way to Albuquerque and moved in with someone I didn't even know. And got a job, started taking a few classes, and lived life.
Yeah.
just lived life and did some odd jobs and things like that. And
So what is it, Yordy? Just help me out here. Help me understand. What is it in your upbringing and whatnot? Like some people would think that's pretty scary to just go do that, but it sounds like it wasn't for you. And we're all wired differently, but like I'm curious, and I don't necessarily mean, I just mean, what were the things that happened in your upbringing that made that? I'm assuming it was easier for you than maybe it would be for someone else. What were the things that made that like, I'm just going to do this? I'm just going to send it.
a lot of it has to do with just confidence of, hey, put yourself out there. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Last time somebody said that to me, I started a business. So
and look where you're at. So, but again, I do equate a lot of it, that confidence, to having that skill, because it doesn't matter where I went. I can always work on a car to make money. So the fear factor of going somewhere that I don't know, I always knew that I could find a job doing something to make money to help myself survive.
yeah.
So that takes a lot of the fear out of those type of moves,
Yeah.
in your life. When you know you have a skill that you can use anywhere.
Yeah. So that skill that you had was something that gave you the ability then to just not have fear because you always. It's funny the way that you say that because those were my father's exact words to me. He's like, learn a trade, learn a skill so that you always have something to fall back on. And I wonder if that's something that is just missing from culture today. Like, those are words that my father actually shared with me, and I didn't understand them at the time. But I was talking with a young man the other day, and he was talking about, well, he's learning a trade and talking about, well, I can go work in a warehouse and make X, but he's so young, he hasn't learned anything else. And I got this picture of some people that I know that, and there's nothing wrong with warehouse work, but I got this picture of some people that I know that they did that and they got a really good job making good money, and they did it for 10 or 15 years, and then they got laid off and they didn't know how to do anything else.
Right.
And they were 35, and now it's like, oh, I need to learn something else.
Well, I think sometimes that's what gives you the confidence, though, is when you're saying a warehouse, though, that's a very specific job. It's not, I wouldn't call that necessarily a trade.
No, it's not. That's my point.
That's just going and getting a job.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a trade and a skill and just going and getting a job in one area. Where if you learn that trade, whether it be, any trade, from carpentry to mechanics to, plumbing.
Did you just not want to say electrical because you know that's my trade?
I was trying
He
to
looks
avoid
down on electricians.
Well,
If
there's
anybody-
a reason for that, but
Nice.
all those trades are important. And the other part that I think a lot of people forget about that is those trades actually help you in your everyday life. I being a mechanic, I can work on my car
Right.
and save myself money because I don't have to pay somebody to work on that car. Someone who's a carpenter, they can build their own deck or make repairs to their house or whatever it takes. It saves you money in the end because you can do it yourself if you need to. So those skills are more than just a job. They're also help you in life.
Yeah.
You equate it to.
Could you not tell my wife that? Because there's things all around the house that she's like, "Can we get that fixed?" I don't know.
Well, but you can say you're too busy to do that. And
Yeah, and she knows me, and she'll be like, "Bullshit."
But so skills, trades and skills like that help you also in life, not just in your job.
Yeah. Come on.
That's where it really hits home a lot of times is, and then that also helps open up doors, because there's other people out there that, well, I don't know how to do that. Can you help me out? I remember growing up as a mechanic, how many of my friends they all drove cars, but they didn't know how to work on them, so they would ask me. And you know what? I never did the work for them. I always made them do the work, and I just helped them.
Yeah.
Because that was my way of trying to teach a man to fish.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you talk about you never did the work for them. You made them do the work, and you helped them. I think that's something too, just in our industries that we forget. I mean, that's part of why the Blackline Institute exists. Is it's about mentorship and teaching people how to do the work, not just doing the work for them.
Right.
And I think that's something that in the skilled trades industry, the other day I was talking with a journey person, and he's like, I don't have the time to teach them how to do it. And I'm going to just say this here. And if you listen to this and you're that journeyman, you're the problem.
Right.
You're the issue. You're the problem, because the deal is if we do not take the time to mentor and teach people, then there will not be anyone left. And I think that's a big part of the issue that we're talking about.
That is so important because that's how you learn things. I would rather learn something from someone who's done it, knows all the tricks, knows all the ins and outs of that industry or whatever it is I'm trying to do, and learn from them than any book that I'm going to pick up and that is giving me some synopsis of something. You know,
Right.
That person knows. Oh, well, grab this plier and do it this way because they've done it 500 times. They know the tricks.
Right.
So if you're a person who has those skills, you need to pass that on to other people because that's what helps you keep your industry going.
That's true. I totally agree. We're going to keep going, but I want to just take a quick break here and ask you a couple of questions that are just going to kind of be a little different.
Yeah.
So I have a 3-question grouping here that I want to ask you. What is your favorite tool? What is your favorite piece of gear or clothing? You know, like something like that. And then what is your favorite boot?
So favorite tool, that one can go either way.
You can't say a person. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we all know that. That could go either way. From a mechanical standpoint, you know, an impact is awesome. You know, that was such an opening from when you're turning wrenches as a living. When you can push a button and have something come off rather than doing it by hand every day, the productivity speeds up and everything goes. So I would say anything that's a powered tool.
So you got to give me a brand. You got to give me a name.
Oh,
so
Snap-on.
Snap-on.
There you go.
I could have bet money on that.
Yeah, Snap-on.
Yeah.
That would be. I have a whole box full of it at home.
So I've held a Snap-on wrench and I've held other brand wrenches.
There's a difference, isn't there?
There is a difference.
A huge difference.
There is a difference, and Snap-on is not cheap, but I think that's probably one of the other reasons that I identify with that is I don't want cheap. I want something that will be here when I'm dead.
Well, you have to look at tools like an investment into your future.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was fortunate enough to, when I was in Votech, I actually, because I was the best student, won a box of Snap-on tools. And so I was spoiled from the beginning.
Yeah.
But I've tried, you know, not to disparage any other tools out there, but Craftsman, I couldn't handle them. I couldn't.
Yeah.
They hurt my hands as you're working with them every day.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Because they would dig into your hands when you're trying to do it. So if you're working with a Snap-on, it was a more comfortable tool. It was a better tool.
Is
more
literally what I
reliable.
was thinking about when you said that. I mean, and when you talk about them being an investment, one of my favorite work clothing brands is 1620, and our creative director, you know, he works with them, and we've done a couple of things with them, and he has this statement that he says, he goes, buy once, cry once. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. When I'm buying a tool, I want to buy it. And, you know, I would prefer not to cry, but the fact of the matter is, the way that I learned that was when I first got into the trade. For me, Klein tools, when it comes to screwdrivers and things like that, they are my absolute go-to favorite. And when I was an apprentice, I'm like, I can't afford these. I can't buy Klein. So I went out and I bought, I'm not going to say the name, but I bought another brand.
And they broke. Then, you know.
They did. I still remember. And it's like, and my foreman, he looked at me and he's like, hey, you're a moron. Just buy Klein and be done. And I still have some of those tools today.
Still have all my Snap-on tools. You buy quality from the beginning, and it makes you do quality work.
Okay.
Now I have a question for you.
Oh, that's not how it works. It's my podcast.
Does Klein Tools make brooms?
Oh, you are. There's so many words that I could use right now, but I don't know if you guys can bleep them out.
That was a little.
That is an electrician joke. Because in the trade industry, the skilled trades, people think that we don't sweep up, and we don't, because we're above that. I mean, that's for the draftsmen and carpenters and
sure,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Turn on your building power without us, all right? And then we'll talk. So
okay. Well,
right, I asked
have
you,
a building to power without us.
I'll have to tell you the story about my son driving by a building. I'm like, I built that, and he's like, Dad, I thought you were an electrician. I didn't know that you build stuff. Yeah. I'm like, shut up. You're not my favorite. Yeah. So I asked you 3 questions.
Okay,
you only answered one.
So the clothing brand, I don't know if it's...
Is it something from the Sears catalog or something like that?
No, I don't know that I've ever... I would just generalize that as a flannel. I love a good flannel.
No kidding.
I mean, not a specific brand, but give me a good, soft, heavy
Have you ever
flannel.
had a Filson flannel?
No, I can't afford Filson's.
I will need to fix that. We'll need to get you a Filson and put Blackline on it or the line.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I'm just saying it for the people out there. I have no intention of getting that for you.
Well, maybe you can get a sponsor from Filson.
Anybody from Filson listening, that we can talk about that.
Yeah. I'm sure you'd back them, right?
Oh, I already own like 6 of their flannels because I'm an electrician, so I can afford it.
Oh, there you go.
So I asked you 3 questions.
And then the favorite boot would be Red Wing, obviously.
A specific type of Red Wing?
Iron Rangers.
I do believe I'm wearing those right now. Look at you. You're wearing them as well. That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you remember where you were before I asked you those 3 questions, before I totally messed you up? So you'd gone out, you're going to school to become a draftsman, all that stuff. So
lived life, went to school a little bit out there.
Let's come back to Lancaster now.
And then, so met a girl, decided Albuquerque is a little bit of not a place I want to raise a family. My father was getting ready to get out of his business, and retire. So I thought I was going to come back and maybe take over his business. And then after some discussion, it just never happened that way. And so I came back and I got a job working for an architect, drafting. And that started me on the career that I'm in now.
So just kind of going back, we've talked about this before, this architect and drafting, and I'm honestly not trying to make fun of age here, but I do think history is important. Now, when you're working for this architect, if I remember correctly in what we talked about, what was the type of paper and stuff like that you were working with this architect? Like, I mean,
yeah. So
we call them blueprints. We still do today. They're not blue in any stretch of the means.
Well, back then they were. It was actually a blueprint. What you had to do is when you would draft it on a computer, you printed it out on what's called a plotter, which
for those listening is just a massive printer.
Or just a massive printer, right?
Yeah.
So the only way you could make copies of that stuff was to go into a blueprint machine, a blueprint. So you would actually take 2 pieces of paper, run the carbon copy basically, and that's what you're doing is running it, and that's how you would get multiple copies of a set of drawings.
Do you remember what the machine was called?
Just a blueprint machine.
Okay.
I don't know that it was a specific brand or anything like that. But I do remember that it really smells because it uses ammonia to transfer that carbon, and that's where they come up. That's where the blue comes from.
So the paper is blue, and then the lines actually are white.
Correct.
On the paper. Look it up. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how it used to be. And I remember spending many hours in a shed in 90-degree weather and ammonia and wondering how I came out of there alive sometimes because of the ammonia smell.
Well, that really explains a lot about your problem
I probably
solving.
killed a few brain cells in there. So
So now you're back in Lancaster, you're doing drafting, and so let's just skip ahead a little bit. Now you currently work for a local company here in Lancaster. Is it all right if I say the name? Is that okay?
sure.
Speedwell Construction. You currently work for them, and you work on what team do you work on there?
I work in the construction side of the business
Okay.
as a project engineer. So when I first came to work there, I started off as a draftsman.
Okay.
And basically worked with another guy who it was just him and I who basically did all the design work for them, and we would basically start from scratch and basically from an idea and run it through the design all the way to conclusion where we would build it. I got a lot of experience in the drafting part of it and drawing things up, but then after we were done with that, we would actually put it out to bid and then go through the whole process of building it on our own also.
Okay. So what would you say? Sorry, I was just stopping for the motorcycle. What would you say is probably one of the biggest struggles in the design and construction space when they come together? Because when you're designing it, it's a two-dimensional piece of paper. Well, it's not two-dimensional anymore, but when you started, and then somebody in the trade actually has to go and build it,
Correct.
and they need electricians as well.
Sometimes. The biggest conflict I see is the communication that has to happen. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen to build a building.
A lot.
And so coordination is highly important in this industry because you have many different facets that are trying to come together to build a building that is for a customer, for an owner, or whoever it may be. It takes a lot of different people and a lot of different ideas to come up with these things, starting from out of thin air, nothing, just an idea.
Right.
So you have to put it on the drawings, and it goes through many different facets of design and redesign and all that. And as you do that, you need to coordinate with other people who are also in, you say you're an electrician. Well, to me, we need to be talking with electricians to find out what are the things that we need to be concerned about when we're building this building.
So I just have to stop you. I am an electrician. I don't just say it. So just.
Well, you were an electrician.
Okay, we can move on.
And so, but
That's true. Yeah.
we need to coordinate, and we need to lean on your experience because not one person knows everything in every aspect of a building.
So you're touching on something that I think is really important to talk about, because when you and I started in the skilled trade industry, it was very different than it is today. And we had, an architectural engineering firm, and recently, I would say in the past, 20 years?
Yeah, 20, 25 years, something like that, yeah.
There's been this new thing called design build. And that is where you and I both work, is in the design build. And it's actually changed the market in what we do and how we do it.
Right.
Because when I started, we would get a spec book and we would get a design that an architect and an engineer put together. And these guys, and I'm not trying to be offensive here, but this is just the facts, usually had learned how to do the drafting, learned how to do the design, and they never had done the work, like actually physically done the work.
In most instances, yes, I would say that's
You
true.
can correct me if we'll dub it out.
I'm just saying that, there are probably some out there.
There are. I've worked with some of them, and they're great.
And you can tell the difference,
And you can tell the difference. And so one of the things that has happened over the past 20, 25 years, as you said, design build has really been overtaking the market. Can you talk for a minute about, because I personally know that you have a lot of experience in that. talk for a minute about design build and what that is, because I don't know that the people listening understand and know what design build construction is.
So design build, from my understanding and in my experience of using it, is basically design build is like a one point of accountability for getting a building built. So typically in the standard for years was you had an architect who would work solely with the owner or customer and come up with a design, and then that design would then be drafted, produce a set of drawings, and then that would be shopped out to multiple contractors.
Gotcha.
And then they're solely responsible for the design and the architect. So the trades people, the people that are actually building it, have no input into what is actually happening or putting on the drawings.
Gotcha.
You have engineers and architects doing that. Design build is you have an in-house engineer or it can be an outsourced engineer or architect, and they work closely with the contractor to come up with a design
And build it.
and then build it. So
Yeah.
then that's where the design build part comes. So you're working, and so what it is that we're trying to, what makes it successful is that the design is based off of what we want to build. We have the experience building the thing, so we have ideas on how to make that, and it's a one point of accountability. We're not going back and saying, okay, architect, you messed up, you did this. No, now we are the architect in this sense, and we're taking responsibility for everything.
So the design build team owns that responsibility.
Correct.
Okay. What are some of the, just like, and we'll get back to what you were talking about, but like you're touching on something here that I think is really important. If you're going to build a building, what are some of the benefits, like the pros with design build, as far as, is it faster? Is it better for you to get a building out of the ground? Like, is it less expensive than the other method?
That can go back and forth. I think in some ways, but usually it ends up being less expensive because you're eliminating some of the fees that you occur with architects and engineers. So because it's all in-house now, when I say in-house, I mean it's a team that's put together to put this together, and you're working with a general contractor,
Right.
as opposed to an architect and engineer putting something together and then sending it out to a bunch of contractors who are just gonna bid what they see on the drawings. So if there's a mistake on those drawings, that ends up costing you because as the owner, it ends up costing you because that was missed. And where in design build, if we miss it, we're taking responsibility for it.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that answered the question that I had.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're working on a design build team. You're at Speedwell, and tell me. So you went from you're 10 years old, working with your dad, parallel parking tow truck by 16, which again I think is BS. And then you're in your 20s and you make a shift and you send it. And so we're talking to a lot of people who are in their early 20s, getting out of high school here, and you're making a decision to send it and go after a trade. You do that, you come back, you start getting a job as a draftsman, and now you're on the design team, or you're on the team at Speedwell Construction, and you're a part of that process. Go.
So I did that for 5-8 years, and then again moved to a different side of it because what keeps things interesting for me is figuring out issues. That's what I enjoy doing myself. So I saw there was the drafting side of it where I was just basically spending most of my time putting together drawings. and coming up with design ideas, or, you know, I didn't really come up with the design ideas. That was more of our architects and stuff like that. I was just putting it into thing. But where I enjoyed it was figuring out issues. You know, when anytime you build a building, there's issues. You know,
Right.
I wouldn't say issues. I would call them challenges.
Oh, look at you being political. I like that. Yeah,
So,
challenges. I'm going to
challenges.
steal that totally.
But so I then reverted to the challenges on the construction side, because I wanted to see what it's like to actually see these. I had so many years of basically drawing things and then never getting to see it come to fruition, because I was in, you know, moving on to the next drawing and moving on to the next drawing. So you never really get out there and actually got your hands in the dirt, which I felt more comfortable with because of my background and being in the trades. I'm more of a hands-on kind of person. It relates to me more when I get my hands on something than looking at a book. So that's where I made the transition to now helping figure out design things, because now I'm on the other side of it. So I'm using the experience from the design build side, being the drafter and knowing all the challenges that are on that side of it, and then now seeing all the challenges that are on the side of construction. So, you know, to me, you know, the more you can relate and know these things, the better it is. It makes you more well-rounded as a person.
Yeah.
Because now I can look at all the struggles that happen, or you know, things that happen out in the field, and help that equate back to making a better design.
Yeah.
So that we're putting better drawings together, and you know, and figuring out all those challenges.
Well, I mean, you know that Blackline has a design team, and we focus on mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And I would say that's one of the things that we think with our teams is super important, is we actually bring some of those tradesmen in sometimes to look through the drawings before we send them off, before we finalize things, because you get in like this two-dimensional, or not two-dimensional, like a tunnel view sometimes, you know, when you're working in the program and you're drafting, and you're just not thinking of some of the other aspects. And I think what makes a good team is bringing those people into play.
Right.
And I think that's also something that's really important with a design team. It's like, not only do you want to bring the trades into play, but like a lot of people don't realize all the things that go into building a building. I mean, you have the construction piece, you have the mechanical piece is the HVAC system and keeping things in the heating and the cooling, and then you have the plumbing piece so that your shit actually goes somewhere, not in the building.
Right.
You know,
Hopefully.
and you hopefully, yeah. And you know, you have the hot and the cold water that comes with that. I like a warm shower personally. I've taken cold showers, but I like to be able to adjust it. And then you have electrical, your lights, you know, the things that power everything else.
Correct.
You know, on a design team, I personally think it's really important for us to collaborate together.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the most important part of it, is to lean on that experience of those other trades or designers that are in that. You can only know so much about any one facet. You know, as a general contractor, we know a lot about a little about a lot of things. You know, but when you look at a subcontractor, you know, whether it be MEPs or whatever, they deal with that facet every day, so they know that more than what we do. They're deeper into the weeds, as we say, you know, in every aspect of what goes on in that. So they know more of the challenges that you run into. So if you don't listen to their experiences, you're missing out.
Why do you think people don't listen? Like I've been on design teams. I've been on design teams with you. I've been on other design teams with Blackline Design, and it's like I feel like sometimes whoever is the person driving, that's in charge sometimes, and I've actually never experienced this with you because you don't allow it. But sometimes it's like I feel like, and I don't know what else to call it other than ego. It's like there's not this conversation. There's not, this is what I want, you be quiet and you do what I want. And they don't want to invite collaboration, and especially if the client is involved. They don't want. Why do you think that is?
there's a little bit of, I think maybe ego may be some of it, but I think a lot of it is just that responsibility sometimes what I would say is that it's a false sense of responsibility. In other words, that they think that they're the one point of accountability, that we're the ones responsible for what the owner is asking us to do, so we have to be in control of the whole thing.
That's really enlightening. And that's helpful for me to hear, because
so that, is they're thinking, okay, we're the one point of accountability, we have to control everything. But it doesn't mean that you can't listen to what other people are saying. You don't have to be and I think so maybe sometimes it's just misinterpreted or mismanaged as conversations are happening, that, oh, no, let's not talk about that, or whatever, we need to talk about that in private. When it's in the end, the goal is to give the customer what they want.
Yeah.
And so if you're not using someone else's experience, you're missing out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Why would I not ask somebody who does this every day? Getting back to what we said before, someone who does this 500 times a day, this is my first time doing it. Why would I not want to listen to what they're saying?
Yeah.
If they're giving me a piece of advice, I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't I?
I think that's really helpful, because I've often been in meetings and I felt like it's ego, and I just want to be open and honest about this. That is really helping me. What you say about responsibility really helps me to understand, because I think perception is a big deal too. And honestly, I think it's a big deal just in general in our culture. We assume that we know, and from where and I say perception, maybe is what I mean is perspective. We from our perspective, it looks this way.
Right.
And we assume that about the individual. And so I assume that that's ego, when it's not ego, it's responsibility.
Correct.
And I think that's really helpful and good, because I have done that with responsibility, and I know that I've made people feel like it was my ego when I just felt responsible, and that's why I was. And we can also think that they're controlling, and it's not even about being controlling. No. It's about that responsibility. So how do I, as a designer who's on the team, I'm not in charge, I'm not driving, how do I communicate to the team that I want to help and I'm not trying to take control? How do I break that responsibility fear and be like, hey, I want to share with you in that responsibility, I want to help, without making it look like it's my ego of like, you need to do what I think? Well,
I think a lot of it comes from humility. Don't force your opinion on it, offer it.
Whoa, stop there. This is important. He said, don't force your opinion, offer it. Tell me what that means.
So, when you're talking with someone, don't say, here's what I think we need to do. Say, hey, here's a suggestion. Wouldn't it be, could we look at doing it this way? There's a big difference in how you present things to people and how they are received. So if you're just offering a suggestion, people are more receptive sometimes to that than where if you go, here's what I think we should do.
Yeah.
Because then it comes across as an ego type of thing. Where if you say, hey, have a little humility in the way you present some things, and you'd be surprised how much that takes a hold better than forcing your opinion on somebody.
Yeah. Even
though you may be right.
Well, I always am. I'm an electrician.
That's debatable, but
okay.
It's hard sometimes not to do that. When you know you're right about something, and you know somebody's doing something wrong, and you have to let it play out. It can be very hard sometimes to not be forceful about it. All you can do is you can offer it, suggest it, hope it takes, and if you're working with a good team, it will take.
Yeah. Well, and I think a good team, even if it doesn't take, a good team acknowledges that they didn't receive it and that they made a mistake.
Right.
And I would hope that's what a good team is, because I often have been in the other, switch it around where I'm in charge and I'm running it, and I'm like, I don't take that advice. But I try to be true to the fact of when I see that I was wrong, owning that publicly and being like, hey, I messed up. Because we do this thing, and we do it in the trades all the time, where it's like, we don't talk about our mistakes.
No.
We don't actually make mistakes.
No. Well, that's an unfortunate thing sometimes in the industry, is that, you know, you feel like you can't make mistakes, and everybody makes mistakes. There is nobody that's perfect.
Yeah.
So
Well, we need to be more open about that. I mean, we need to be more open about our mistakes, because I think that creates this culture of fear for the next generation or the people that we're trying to mentor. It's like, especially if you have this mindset and this persona of that you don't make mistakes, it's like, well, if I'm looking up to you and I have this persona of you.
They've made mistakes.
Exactly.
They've all made mistakes. Everybody's made mistakes. There's nobody who hasn't made mistakes. And the fact, if you're not willing to share those, again, back to humility.
Yeah.
You have to have humility. You know, you are going to make mistakes in life. And culture is important in the industry, that we don't put people down for things that happen like that, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. Mistakes.
So when you say that, for me, help me with my team in our design services. How can my team have humility with that, with the teams that we're working with? How do we do that so that your team knows, hey, I mean, I heard you say, you know, choose your words carefully, the way that you say it. And I think that matters. And I am guilty of not choosing my words carefully, just to be clear. But how do we continue to exercise humility in the room and be honest about our mistakes? Because how do I get my team to understand that and make them feel like that's okay?
Well, that comes from showing them. I mean, you can say things till you're blue in the face, but you have to show them that when they make that mistake, that you're not going to rip their head off or or degrade them because they made that mistake. It may be hard in that moment sometimes, to not do that, because it could have cost you some. It could be painful.
It usually is.
The mistakes are painful, and let's be serious. I mean, they are painful, but we need to not react about it. And because, again, everybody makes mistakes. Now, if it's a continual thing, then that's a whole different subject. But so to answer your question, I think you have to show them that when they make mistakes, that there's maybe repercussions, but it's not necessarily just on them. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
So hey, we made the mistake, not you made the mistake.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually, it transcends whether you're part of a design team, whether you're an electrician, a plumber, or a carpenter, or a steel worker. That concept is something that we all need to own. You say the way that you teach is you show. And so that means that you have to exercise those things. You have to be open about your mistakes. You have to be okay with the world knowing what you say that isn't right, or what things that you might have done. That's how you exercise humility, is by showing that to other people and being honest about that. And that, for me, to you, is one of the biggest problems in our industry, is that we are not being honest with the people that we work with. We are not telling them, hey, I screwed up. This is where I screwed up. And I get it that it's scary, but that's what we have to do. And I am guilty of not doing that, and I need to do it more. And I understand why we're afraid of it, but we need to do that.
The tension is because of there's always money tied to it in our industry. So anytime you give up that, you feel like if you say I made a mistake, then it could cost me money, or they're going to take advantage of it, or whatever. And that's just an unfortunate part. But again, if we all work together on these things, we'll come through it.
Yeah.
And everybody will be better for it.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, if we don't work together on these things, we actually can't build anything.
Nobody can build it by themselves.
Nobody can build it by themselves. And one of the things that Blackline is trying to do in lifting the view of the skilled trades and even in the trades is we're trying to change that. We can't do that by ourselves. So when you're listening to this and you're sharing it on social media and you're talking about it and you're doing it on the job, we can't do this alone. And so I'm asking you, as you listen to this podcast, that you would be honest in your conversations. Talk with people about what it is. Be honest about the mistakes that you make. We can't do it alone. And so I'm asking you to do this with us. Come after it. Step up to the line. The podcast is called The Line because it's a line that needs to be stepped up to. And so you can decide whether or not you want to step up to the line with Yordy and myself and make a difference in the trade industry that we are in. And so that's what we need to do. That's why you and I are talking.
Yep.
You know, I pictured myself in a white room later in life, but it wasn't like this. So, and I might still go there. Who knows?
Hey, stranger things have happened, right? Yeah.
This is true. All right. Well, as you know, we've been talking here for a while, but there's just a couple of other things that I just want to ask you, if I can.
Yep.
Best job, worst job.
You mean like in construction or just in life?
Why don't we go with life?
I would say that's twofold. What I would say is best job is right now I love what I'm doing because what I see is a result at the end of my day. You know, at the end of my day or at the end of the year or week or whatever it may be, I see results. I see a building that wasn't there before that is standing there now that I can, like you said with your son, you drove by, you can point to that building and say, hey, I had some involvement into that building.
Is that how I'm supposed to say it?
You had involvement.
I had involvement in that building.
You had some involvement in that building. You know, so it's a tangible that you can point to and have pride. I think that's one of the things that, you know, now there is pride that is good. You know, have pride in what you're doing. You know,
don't you think? I just said this to my son the other day. I want to be proud. I don't know if I'm okay with pride. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like,
well, I mean, what I mean by that is have you be proud of what you did.
Yeah, okay? I agree.
Not
Prideful.
Not prideful, but proud that you helped accomplish something. You know, that you should always have a little bit of pride in anything you do, because if you don't, then you're just doing it.
Right.
You know, if you're not putting yourself into that, then you're just doing something. You're going through the motions.
Right.
So you're attaching yourself to everything you do in life, whether you like it or not. You're
Boy,
attaching
that's the
yourself.
truth.
You know, so you know, it doesn't matter if you're pushing a broom or
I don't.
You know,
I'm an electrician, so I don't push a broom.
well, this is true. We come to that conclusion because Klein doesn't make that.
Klein does not make a broom. No,
So-
they do not.
But it doesn't matter if you're doing that or you're building rockets. You know, you have to have pride in whatever you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I totally agree.
So back to your original question, I love at the end of the day looking at a building that I've had involvement in and driving around and being able to point out that things. But then there's also in the mechanical side, I love the fact that I can take a car that doesn't run and make it run. You know, or something like that. Those are things that just make you feel good in the end. You know, figuring out from my standpoint, figuring out something that nobody else could, or that, you know, you just figured something out.
So you said that your best job is where you work now, which that's funny. And so, I mean, that's, you have to say that. But I know it's
no,
true.
I don't.
I know. Well, and that's just it. I know you would not say that if it wasn't true, because you often say things that are true that you would probably be better off if you kept them to yourself.
I do have that fault.
Yes, this is true.
Yes.
But I don't know if you said worst job.
Oh, worst job.
Yeah.
You know, worst jobs to me are those just meaningless jobs. I've worked in restaurants and things like that. Those jobs to me just there's no attachment to that. You're just showing up there. like I could never work in a warehouse, you know what I mean, where I'm just showing up every day doing the same thing over and over again. There's no challenge to that to me. I think, you know, having a challenge in life is just what makes it acceptable to me.
Right.
You know.
Well, and challenge can be different. I mean, it can be different for different people, but the way that you're wired,
Right.
those jobs wouldn't satisfy you.
It wouldn't satisfy.
And it doesn't mean that anybody that works in a warehouse that it's like that you don't have value or that it isn't challenge. It's just the way that you're wired, and a lot of that has to do with, I think, your life experience and your trade experience.
Right.
And, you know, as I've talked with different people in the skilled trades, the number one thing, whether you're an excavator, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're an electrician, whether you're a plumber, the number one thing that I've heard stated that of why they love what they do is problem solving.
Yeah.
They have to figure out the solution. They have to figure out, and that is what we do. You know, we start with a patch of dirt, and we need to make it a building, and we need to get electric there. We need to get, you know, water there. We need to get the pad there. We need to get a road there so that we can get in. So there's always challenges, as you said.
Right.
And we need to come up with solutions. So,
and what's better than that? I mean, for me, you know,
Yeah.
some people may not like that, but that's something that you have to figure out in yourself as to what makes you happy in life. You know?
yeah. Well, and if that's something that you're looking for, that you want to challenge, I can guarantee you that a career in the skilled trades is challenging.
Absolutely.
And
it's
the other
never
thing,
the same.
It is never the same. And the other thing that I could guarantee for you is the limit of where you can go in the skilled trades is actually, there is no limit. I mean, there's no ceiling as to where you can go.
No, you can move so far up in the trades, and I think there's a misconception out there that if you're in the trades, you don't make money.
Yeah, I happen to know that's not true.
And we all know that's not true. But there's that misconception, I think, that's being put out there by the education system that if you want to make good money and go far in life, you need to, you know, go to college.
Yeah.
That's the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
There's many paths.
There are many paths. There are many
the trades
options.
are a very good option, you know.
Well, I think back to what you said in the beginning. It gives you a level of confidence that it's like, hey, you're going to fire me? No problem. I'll go fix cars.
Right.
You know, you're going to fire me? No problem. I'll go get a job. And right now, there is a huge people problem and a shortage that you can go anywhere and get a job. And the fact of the matter is that that's not going to change quickly. I mean, that's why we're doing this. It's why we're talking about this.
Yep.
So as we're talking here, there's a portion of the podcast that we're adding in and just kind of talking about, and you'll be hearing more and more about it, but faith and future. I just kind of want to talk about that, and I'll talk about it from my perspective and for me, and then I want to hear your perspective on it. So my faith in God and as a creator and all of that plays a huge part for what I believe and why I'm doing this. And I feel a calling to this beyond just the work that I'm doing, you know, and it's something that I couldn't have attached it early on, but it's just a conviction that I have that's deep within my fiber of my being, that this is something that I have to do because I think that people matter. I think that people are created and they have value because they've been created in the image of God. And it's okay that there are people on my team who do not believe the way that I do. You and I don't believe all the same things, and that's okay. Yep. But my faith plays a big part in my life. And so I call it faith because I think many people have different types of faith, and they live it out different ways. And so for me, that's my faith piece of why I do what I do. The future piece for me is I read a statistic, and I know we said we weren't going to quote statistics because we didn't want to be wrong, so I'll just be vague about this. They say by 2030 or 2031 that we're going to be in trouble in the skilled trade shortage, that there won't be people to turn your lights on. There won't be things in place so that you can still flush your toilet or have a hot shower. Because the people that are doing it now, they're doing the math, and it says that by 2030 or 2031, those people, they won't exist anymore.
Right.
And so that's the future piece for me. It's like, okay. And so my question to you is faith and future. Why do you do what you do, and why does it matter?
What I like to do is pass on what's the faith part of it is that, you know, I believe we're all here for a reason. You know,
Yeah.
we're here to, you know, we all have our differences, we all have our skills, we all have what makes us us, you know, and God has given us that. You know, I can be good at one thing and you're good at another thing, and that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
That's what he intended, right?
Yeah.
As far as the future goes, I think it's so important that we keep that tradition alive, because if these people go out of the trades, so say, you know, if I leave the trades and I'm not passing down what my knowledge is, that's knowledge lost.
Lost.
Think about, you know, how many generations, you know, your grandma or whatever, and their knowledge that they had of things, a recipe, you know, that's equations, you know, you might have remember for your grandma cooked this great recipe that no one else knew, because
Right.
she didn't write it down. She just knew it from her heart, and she cooked from her heart or whatever. But now, as she passed on, that went
gone.
with her. It's gone.
Yeah.
So the same thing's happening in the trades right now. Is as these people are losing, or, you know, leaving the industry, we're losing valuable information and
Yeah.
valuable things that aren't getting passed on because there's not people there to receive it. We need people there to receive it, because to me, what's scarier than not having those people around? You know,
Right.
if you go to flip your light switch on and it doesn't light up, what are you going to do?
I have some good electricians that you can call. Sorry.
Well, but seamless plug. But you know, it's what's scarier than that, you know,
Yeah.
or you go to flush your toilet and now all of a sudden it doesn't work. You know, all these people who think that it's so important to have money and all this kind of stuff and all this, it's an illusion. You have to have these basic things, because what happens? So say if the internet goes down tomorrow, what are all those people going to do?
Yeah.
You
You're
have to know how to survive. So what do you need to know to survive? Skills.
Yeah.
So to look over skills and ignore that is just a mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
It's a horrible mistake. And I think, you know, we really need to keep pushing the fact that we need skilled people out there.
Yeah.
We need people, because those are the people that make the world go round.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we need upper management. We need all those people to kind of organize it. That's their skills. Okay. That's their skills. But we also need people that can implement and do things, you know, with their hands.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that for a second there, because you talk about upper management and that sort of thing, and we need those people that can do it with their hands. I'm not saying that you can't do the upper management thing without having the trade experience, but I will say it's going to be harder to connect and understand. And a tradesperson can actually climb that ladder and go wherever they need, and you will have an advantage in management over the guy that doesn't have the trade experience that you have.
Because you've done it.
Because you've done it.
You've been in that situation. Anybody who has actually been there can manage better,
right?
Because they've been in that situation. They know what they're talking about. You know, honestly, people in the trades are going to respect someone in management who's done their job before.
Yeah,
more than someone who's straight out of college and
it's
thinking
just a fact.
It's just facts.
Yeah.
You don't get the respect earned because you haven't done it. And it's just a fact. So there is nothing wrong with coming out of high school and working your way up through an industry. And let's be honest, you know, there's industries right now that they're willing to train you, and you should take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Why would you want to go and put yourself in debt and that could be a 10-year swing. I mean, I talk to my son about this all the time, and I say, you're talking what could be a 10-year swing because you're going to college for 4 or 5 years or whatever it is that specific to your degree. And again, this isn't a jab at college because there are some some trades or things that need college. You can't be a doctor without going to college.
Right.
Let's be honest. But there's also things that they're just people I think they need to go to college because that's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
But what that's doing is now you're taking 5 years of your youth. Okay, so when you're most have the most drive and everything, you're taking 5 years of that and going and getting an education or whatever it is.
Oh, I got an education on the trades.
Yeah, but there's different types of education.
There are different types of education.
But now you've also put yourself in debt. And let's be honest, college is just insanely expensive.
Yeah,
it really is insanely expensive. So that could take you another 5 years after you graduate, even if you do make more money, to pay that off. So now you're in your mid 30s. You've just lost 10, 15 years of your work.
Yeah.
Over that time, you've could have made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I think there's a misconception that's being taught out there that, you're not going to make money if you're in the trades. And I think that's
just not true.
Correct. It's not correct.
I will say it's directly connected with your drive. If you want to work hard and you have drive, there's no limit to what you can make. There's no limit to what you can do. If you don't have drive and you're not willing to do the hard work,
it doesn't matter where you go. You're not going to succeed.
Boy, that's the truth. That's the truth. Well, I just want to thank you guys for listening, for stepping up to the line here with us. And so I want to invite you to continue to step up to the line as these podcasts come out. I don't even want to invite you. I want to challenge you. We talked about the issues that are in the skilled trades. We talked about John's history and where he came from, how he learned what he learned. We heard some things that we don't believe are true, like he can parallel park at 16, a tow truck and a car. So
that was when I was 16. So that's a long time ago. So
right. So anyway, I was going to say some things that were probably inappropriate, but I just want to thank you for participating with us in this, and I want to ask you to continue to step up to the line with us as these podcasts come out. Listen to them, share them, be a part of making a difference. I'm challenging you. I'm not inviting you. Step up to the line with me and let us lift the view of the skilled trades. That's what we want to do, and we want to do it with you. So thank you for listening. John, thank you for participating here today and having this honest conversation with me and stepping up to the line. I really appreciate that, and I'd love to have you on again sometime if you would entertain it. But
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I'd love to get out there. I'd love to get the word out there to people that the misconception about the trades needs to stop, and we need to change that narrative.
100% agree. I mean, that is literally why we're doing what we do.
Yep.
So
it's a good thing you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So that's why I agreed to do this and be a part of this.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you again. And step up to the line. All right. Thank you very much.